Alrighty. This is Max Nichols. I run Hyrule Interviews, and this is a tour of my backend setup for Hyrule Interviews and how it all works, and how I'm able to post quotes every day pretty easily. So I already have a separate video where I showed how I post the quotes, so I'll kind of just show you the setup in more detail now. So if we go to HyruleInterviews.com, we'll see the front page how a user sees it. It's kind of ugly because it's Notion, and Notion is the tool I use, and it does not allow me to do a lot of fancy layout work. I kind of just get what I get. So this is what I built, and I've every once in a while. It's pretty rare that I actually bother with this, but I'll post some sort of blog post that's like an update about the site. So that goes in here in this little feed, and then over here it posts the most three recent daily quotes that I posted. I should probably just make that 5 or 7 or something. And then anyone who's using the site can go look at the different databases, such as interviews. So at this point, I'm assuming if you're watching this, you've seen the site, because I don't know why you'd care otherwise. So I'm just going to go over to my backend view in my Notion instance. So, Notion is a lot of things, but there's two things that it does very well, which are the reasons I picked it. First is that it's a really nice and easy to use. What you see is what you get editor. I can just come in here and like edit the text on any page, and if someone were to go to that page right now, they would see my horrible typo right there. And now they see it properly again. So it's just kind of like really easy to work with in a very natural, organic way, as if it's a word processing program or something. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is it is pretty powerful way of setting up cloud-based relational databases that can also be published for other people to see. Now, there's a whole world of database like software and tooling and stuff out there, and I'm not really an expert in any of it. But what I did know that I cared about ease of use and connecting things in multiple different databases together, and then publishing all that for everyone. So that's how I arrived at Notion. I actually like the reason I've learned this was I posted on Twitter like years ago, and I was like, "Hey, like here's what I want to do. What the heck do I do with? Where do I go to do this?" And somebody was like, "Notion is perfect," and I never looked back. So the meat of the site is under this databases section. All this other stuff like about us and whatnot is all just like static pages, or like site maintenance shenanigans. The important thing is these databases. So I started off initially with interviews. The original impetus for this website for me was I noticed that some interviews I cared about were disappearing off the internet. And I also had found that when I wrote articles for like Zelda sites, like Zelda Universe or something, or some other publications like Lock On magazine, I made a lot of use of quotes from interviews. I thought those were like really valuable for the articles I was writing. So I was like, okay, somebody needs to make sure everything's being kept track of and saved. And I want to personally, as a Zelda writer, want to be able to find quotes easily. So that was kind of the impetus for the site. I also got a bunch of encouragement from Melora over at History of Hyrule, who's been my friend for many years. Right. So the two initial goals were make a database of interviews and also archive the interviews. Right? I had this initial goal of actually saving copies of every interview and hosting them privately for just me, and then if the website that actually hosted them ever like went away or something, I would theoretically then post it publicly in some fashion. Over time, I gave up on that second goal. I realized it was kind of out of scope. I wasn't really able to do it very well. I wasn't keeping up, and also I wasn't like, it's not like I was going to do a better job than Internet Archive already does. So nowadays, I just have an Internet Archive plugin on my browser, and I occasionally just submit sites to go get saved in their database instead, which is way easier. So that left me with just being a reference place where there's easy way to like sort and filter metadata about interviews. So that's what the site is today. So let's see how many I have. 1,481. I've slowed down a lot. There's so many magazines I haven't reviewed yet, but that's that's a good number. Okay, so let's see if I come through here and open one of these interviews. Let's look at this one. Make it full screen just because that's nicer. So you'll see that an interview is comprised of it's a database object entry, depending on what language you want to use, and it has just a bunch of properties on it. It also has a page and an ability to comment. So like if I wanted, and in some cases I do this, I'll actually let me find a better example actually. Something from Nintendo Power. So when I do Nintendo Power interviews, I actually post the interview in here because nobody cares. When I'm posting something from like IGN or Polygon or an actual current publication, I don't want to steal their traffic, so I just link to it. So these are the only cases I really use this area down below. But I have an area where I enter any product that is covered by the interview. I try to keep it to products that someone is sharing actual insight on. So simply being mentioned isn't good enough. It needs to actually have a story or an interview answer or some insight about the product for me to bother putting it here. Some interviews, I will go in and I'll add none if they don't talk about any products. Those are usually very interesting interviews. Okay, so that's thing number one. Thing number two is publication. Now, both of these fields, in fact, all three of these fields, products, publications, and interviewees, are what Notion calls a relation. So what that is I'm not actually entering text here. I am instead searching another database on my website. And then these are, everything that shows up here in the search field is something that has been added to that other database. It's like Ishii Aonuma. Yep, like he's obviously in the database. So in all three of these cases, those are referencing entirely other databases I have. If I need to add something new, like there's a new person who's never been interviewed before and they're not in my database of people, I can add it from here. I don't think I'm in my own database. I could add myself here. I do not do that because I didn't work on Zelda. Okay, and make sure to add the date because that's super helpful for, organization. In some cases, I will get an interview with only a partial date. I'll only know the year it's from, or I'll only know the year and the month, and I don't know the actual date. So in those cases, I'll add as much as I can, and Notion doesn't really allow me to add a partial date, so I have to fill out the whole thing, even if I don't actually know what it all is. So in those cases, I click the checkbox for partial date. The link to the source is just a URL, or in some cases, an ISBN number. All right. So I'll get to the formulas in a minute. Quotes. Later on, after I add an interview, I may come back and I may read through it carefully and summarize any quotes. So we'll get to the quotes in a few minutes. In this case, I thought this interview was kind of boring. I didn't pull out any quotes from it, which is why it says none here. Languages, got a bunch of languages in the database. Then texts or format options. And then I have a database of journalists and media. So I'll add like the author of the interview, the interviewer, the translator for the website, whoever I know. Oftentimes I don't know. Nintendo Power, for instance, didn't really credit who did what in most interviews. And I apparently left this blank, so I'm going to click unknown. Excuse me. And then similarly, I like to credit the archivists who put work into this. In this case, I took these scans and link up here to scans that are uploaded by somebody named eDay. over at what's it called, Retro Mags. So I credit them, and I credit myself. In theory, I've set up the site so that someday I could have someone else come in and help me out, and that they would credit themselves instead. But so far, it's just me. Archive, I don't really use it anymore. I should probably delete it. And there's a few auto-generated things. Like this one just automatically counts. What kind of property is this? Roll-up property. It'll count how many entries are linked in the quotes field. Excuse me, my throat's going dry. Okay, so now let's talk about formulas. Formulas are really powerful for me. They help reduce the work I have to do quite a bit. So one of the most basic ones is this covers Zelda formula. All I'm doing here is I'm checking the product, so everything that's listed in this products field. There's some syntax here that I won't really get into too much, but basically it's checking the products, and then it's going into them one by one and checking, is this a Zelda product, which is a field on the product database entry. If true, then say true. If false, say false. And this is just, for organization. I like to highlight ones that cover Zelda specifically because people are typically interested in that. Down here, we come to status. This is one of my more complicated formulas. So, I have a whole bunch of stuff here. But basically, what I'm doing is I'm just checking each of the fields in here one by one and seeing if they're blank. So the most important fields I go through first. I put like a little red character because I really want everything in the database to have a source, interviewee, date, and publication. Those are the most important fields that people care about the most, and that I personally care about the most. Then we get to less important ones like language and product and format. And then there's a few kind of down at the bottom that are not super important anymore. And then if it gets through all of those and they all check out, then we just get status 10 complete with a little green, which is what we are here. Specifically because I just filled out the journalist field. You can see it changed. Okay, so let's see what's next. I guess that's all in here. I feel like I'm missing something. Oh yeah, topics. So topics are, it's not technically a formula, but it's kind of same similarity. It's a roll up again. And this is just grabbing topics from quotes. So if there were any quotes are where I actually set topics. I don't do the work of setting the topics for every interview. I instead, if I have found an interesting quote that I've specifically pulled out, I will apply a topic to the quote, and then it will summarize that here for all the quotes that are linked in. And that's the interviews. So as you saw, it's connecting to a bunch of other databases and pulling data from them. So let's go look at products next. So right here, I've carefully put in all the Zelda games in here, and right here I have type main, Zelda game main, so it's for the main series, and then I have a couple other types like remakes, DLC, Zelda game other, which is where we get stuff like the CDI games and the Game & Watch games and Link's Crossbow Training and the Tingle games and Hyrule Warriors. I like to list the canceled stuff because it's kind of fun to look at, all the quotes related to the Wind Waker 2. And then we get down to just everything else. And for the most part, I leave these blank. I'm not filling these out. In fact, we probably just get rid of non-Zelda and replace it with blank, because everything that's blank is non-Zelda. But if we dig into these, I go through each of these games and I list out the entire development team, everyone in the credits. So Zelda 1, I have 11 people, which is actually including several people that weren't in the credits, but that I know worked on it. Excuse me. If we go down to something like, Tears of the Kingdom, there's 1,336, which I did by hand because I'm insane. Um, but okay, so that's the main. That's a very important one because it's how I know who has worked on Zelda. Is if they're in my developers database, it's because I filled them out on the product, and I have a checkbox for every person in here that says they're Zelda credited. And when I'm investigating interviews, I click new interview, and if I let's see, like this is an interview with like Soejima. Ah, yes, that person did work on Zelda. Let's see, I have some people in here who didn't. Wow, why am I blanking on Sega creator or Sonic creator's name? Yuji Naka. Yeah. So there's no checkbox there. So I know at a glance that this person did not work on Zelda. Makes things easy for me. He's in the database anyways because he's appeared in interviews with Zelda creators. Okay, so that's all the people. I have these other fields that kind of I don't really use for anything like platform. It doesn't really matter. It's kind of just there for no reason. Release date is kind of nice. I sometimes come here for like reasons for like when I'm writing a Zelda article or whatever, just to remind myself what all the dates were and stuff. I think I have one of the most complete lists of Zelda products out there because I've got crazy stuff like the Oracle of Ages Choose Your Own Adventure book, and somewhere around here, where are they? Got all the game books. At least I thought I did. Where are the game books? Well, whatever. It's not important right now. Let's see the rest of this stuff. Okay, and then of course it links to all the interviews and quotes that are related to this product. Zelda product down here is just a formula. All it's doing is it's a bunch of or statements. It's just saying like, is this listed as a Zelda game main or a remake or a Zelda game other, etc. down the whole list. Oh, you can see a few like vestigial things in here that I used to have. I used to list the manuals separately and stuff because, but that was too much work. All right. When I have personally imported all the credits, I manually check this box so I know I'm done. There's a few things in here where I need to go through and still get all the credits, like some of the weird, like I don't have the credits for Malblin's Magic Spear picture book. Although that's on the shelf behind me, so I could probably go find them. Okay, so anything else worth calling out in here? I've got some beta stuff going on that. Let me try to find a better example where I'm trying to like actually specify what people's roles were. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that or not because it's a lot of work and it's kind of clunky in Notion, but not super important here. Like down here, you see this roles section, and it's like, oh, I listed each title from the credits as like an entry in another database. It's messy. I don't love it, so don't worry about that too much. Okay, so that's all the product stuff. Let's see if we go to developers. Developers are simpler. A Honda is one of the manga artists / writers that make up Akira Himikawa. But so for every person, I have at the very least I have the worked on section filled out if they worked on a Zelda game, and if they didn't work on a Zelda game, then that means they were in an interview, so they're listed as connected to one of these interviews. I auto-generate a link to a ZeldaWiki.wiki page for that person. A lot of these people don't have pages, but some of them do. Occasionally, while I'm going through and reading interviews with people, I'll go in and edit their wiki page because I enjoy that. I don't usually fill out the pronouns, but for some people, I take the time. Very few people in the database. You can see I'm scrolling down over here, and there's like 5,000 names, right? Very few of them have images, but for a few folks, I've uploaded these tiny little icons. I wish I could do bigger ones, but those show up. Like if we come here to one of the interviews, you'll see their icons are like right here. So they're like text sized. Right. So basically, this just lists all the interviews and quotes they appeared in and the products they worked on. If they are Zelda credited, um, I'm just doing a similar thing to like I did in the interviews, where it was seeing like, is there a Zelda game listed in the products? Then mark it as covers Zelda. This is the same thing, but for people. I just have some quote counts and interview counts because I thought it was interesting to see who had the most interviews and who had the most quotes. For some folks, I have their date of birth, which is used in another formula on the quotes to automatically generate their age at the time of the quote. And for a very select few folks, I have their date of death, such as for Satoru Iwata or Hiroshi Yamachi. If those dates, either of those dates are only approximate, like I often only have people's birth year, not their birth month or day, I'll check approximate date here. And sometimes I have notes. So in this case, A Honda is a pin name, not this person's real name. Their real name is unknown. So I note that down here. Even their pseudonym, they keep the A secret. Oh yeah, and I also forgot to mention, if they have other names they're known as, I list them here. So for a lot of people, it's like, they're credited as Rob and in one game and Robert in another game, so I'll put that in here sometimes. Under quotes, this is a fun area. So let's see, if we open these up, I usually create these quotes from the corresponding interview page. So it automatically fills out a bunch of stuff from the interview, such as the source interview and the date. Those are pulled from the interview it's connected to, and the publication as well. The product I fill out manually because not every quote covers every product from the interview. I also fill out the people manually because not every person from an interview is in every quote. This is just a text field right here. And this is where you can start to see the guts of my system a little bit here, because it's like, it's listing person 1, 2, and 3, but like separately down here. And which I forgot to do here apparently. Shigeru Miyamoto was the producer of Link's Crossbow Training. Satoru Iwata was president of Nintendo. And there is no person 3. So I put in my little double carrots to mark that. This is where I list out the actual topics. Whoop, wrong thing. So you can see I have a list of topics here. I don't have that many broken out because I don't want to have to sort through a huge list every time I'm putting a quote in the system. But I've got like 15 or something. So when I'm entering the quote into the system, I'll add the topic here. If we click on mechanics, we can get a list of every interview and every quote that has that topic. 57 quotes, or interviews, 113 quotes. And I also actually write down what I mean, like why I use these. So in this, this is actually a database of its own, right? I have a database over here of topics, which is what we're looking at right here. Okay, so come back over here. Person's role. This is pulled from the people. It doesn't break it out per person, so these are the roles pulled from both of them. If I had generated the image for this, I'd attach it here. If I'd posted it before, I'd post the date here. Error checking. This would... Right now, all it checks for is whether it's too long. Because, I'm posting these quotes as bite-sized, like, images every day. So I give myself a character limit that I break sometimes. But it will throw an error here if I do. And then it has some generated text for me. So the post blurb. Oh, this is gross to look at. So if you ever get into a complicated text generation formula like this in Notion, make sure you learn how to do these lets. I don't know what lets stands for, but it's basically variables, right? I can define different variables here. And then for a lot of these variables, I'm pulling content from like the people. So, for instance, I'm pulling the birth dates 1, 2, and 3 from the person at index 0, 1, and 2 in the list of people. And I do the same for the death dates, and then I do some horrible calendar math. Uh, that I don't remember how it works, but it took me a while to figure out how to do the calendar math there. But to generate the actual age for the 3 people, uh, you grab their names, grab their roles. I have a bunch of stuff here where I take a generated string and then I want to like remove certain characters or uh, stuff like colons and apostrophes and stuff because I want to generate a tag, and tags don't work with colons, stuff like that. There's still more, and then I actually generate the lines. Looks like I made variables for each line, yada yada yada. All told, it pops out this right. uh, the name, the source, some tags, hashtags, I should say. You'll see it. There's no space here. That's one thing I've never been able to figure out. I can't get it to add a space there, so I have to do that manually. And then down here, I do the same thing. I literally copy pasted all those variables, or a lot of them at least, and generate the alt text. All right. Anything else worth covering? Let's see here. Publications are. I don't really do much with the publications database. I just reference them from interviews. Occasionally, in particular cases where there's like a. Let's look at Polygon. Polygon, I went through and went through all their history a few months ago because they got bought out by like some AI shit company. So I wanted to gather all their interviews before they closed down. So I forgot to do it. Normally I add in the date. Well, I have a property for this. I'm just gonna say a few months ago. So that like if I come years later, I'll know like, oh, I only need to check from this date onwards, not from the beginning. But what I was trying to show you was, I know I do it with Nintendo Power. So for like certain magazines and stuff, I will actually break out a list of all their issues and give a checkbox once I have reviewed that issue for quotes, or not quotes, interviews. You can see that I haven't actually gone through the entire run of Nintendo Powers yet. There's several issues I have not done. And of course, there's a Nintendo Power podcast too, which I haven't listened to a single one of those because audio is way more work than text. That's kind of all there is to see in the publication side. I have other fields like language and URL that I don't really bother to fill out because it's not really important for anything. Journalists, similar. Like, all this really is a list of people that I can reference for the credits on the interviews. Right now, it's sorted by who I have the most interviews with. Black Oak is also known as Shmuplations. He runs a amazing website called shmuplations.com where he's been posting interviews translated from Japanese to English for years. So he has the most by far, etc. You get down to people who have only like one of them pretty quick, and they make up the vast majority of the database. Disciplines. This one's kind of simple. The only thing interesting here is that I wrote out my definition for each discipline. Because a lot of people, and I've actually like linked people to these pages when they're like, what does a director do? And I'm like, well, I'm glad you asked. I have a page for that. And that is it. The rest of these are statics pages, like the FAQ and special thanks and whatnot. Trying to think if there's anything else worth mentioning. Nope, I think that's it. Hopefully that was interesting, or at least educational. And I am pleased to have you as a reader of Hyrule interviews. See you around.